Hello and welcome to Strangers Stopping Strangers. This is the podcast number 23. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big welcome back to anyone who's returning, and thanks for stopping in and checking us out to anyone who's new. So this week's podcast, I get to talk to Rob Rosman, and such an amazing guy. We had so much fun. We originally connected on Facebook through a page that's called Dead Minuteman, and this is the spot that has just the greatest pictures and videos from all the live music that's going on all the time. And it's from small local bands to big venue and concerts, and it's really a place that you go and you really feel like you were part of whatever was happening. So such a great place to visit. Rob's story starts in Philadelphia in the mid-1980s with some kind of amazing concerts that got him going. And it takes us all the way up through to today and really into the future, where he tells us about a concert that he's putting on called the Tree of Life, which is in February on the 25th at the Rough Trade Center in Brooklyn. And some amazing musicians, and 100% of the proceeds go to the Ferncliff Manor, which is a residential home for children with developmental disabilities. So definitely check that out if you are on the East Coast. So enjoy the podcast. We had just such a good time going through, I'm sure, what's just a tiny fraction of his shows and experiences. And as always, just a lot of fun and some great tunes and stories. So thanks as always for checking in, and be back soon. Bye. Well, welcome, Rob, to Strangers Stopping Strangers.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you on. This is exciting. We've talked on the phone, and oh my goodness, I mean, you have so many stories that I can't imagine. We're just going to get a little piece of them in the hour or so podcast here.
Right, I'm going to try and fit in side stories too. You know, there's been a lot of people and places over the years, and I don't want to forget anybody as best as I can.
Okay. Well, let's start at the beginning, because I have found, so this has become the operating rhythm. Everyone wants to know what sucked you in. So I want to hear a little bit about, you know, early days music and early concerts, and then we'll play some music.
Excellent. Okay, well, you know, when I first started going to concerts, I was about 15 years old, and my first shows were you know, U2 shows and at the Tower Theater in Philly, and Police shows at JFK, and I had an opportunity to sort of jump on to the music scene at the very end of the new wave bandwagon. Mm-hmm. And you know, I had an opportunity to go as a 15-year-old. I was at Live Aid in Philly back when I was 15 years old, and it was a 24-hour show. Wow. Little known thing about Live Aid is that the first band wasn't the Hooters, which are a Philly band. The first band was really Run DMC. They came out before anyone else came out, as the crowd was coming into JFK, and they sang My Adidas, and it was an awesome moment in musically.
Wow.
For sure.
Wow. Yeah, that concert really was, you know, one for the books for sure.
Well, yeah, no, Live Aid was a moment in time. It really was. It was almost a 36-hour experience, and I was a young person at the time, so it was crazy way to sort of get indoctrinated into the music scene in Philly at the time. You know, everybody in Philly, you know, that's my age, the guys from Philly were into two things. It really was ice hockey and the Grateful Dead. So around 1987, my friends and we started going to see the Grateful Dead, and my close friends, their first cousin had always worked in management for Mickey Hart. So over the years, we got tickets courtesy of Mickey Hart. I can't remember if the first show that I went to was a courtesy ticket, but it may have been. So, but the first show I went to was in September of '87 at the Spectrum, and it was right after some memorable shows I know at Madison Square Garden that year too.
Yeah. No, that was a banner year, '87. That was right when, the new album came out and people started, rediscovering him. It was almost like a bit of a renaissance that, continued for years on.
Yeah, they called us In the Dark Heads.
Yeah, Touchhead, Touchheads.
Touchheads. Yeah.
Well, how funny
I remember that.
So here we are 30 years later, the old coots that were the young bucks at the time. It always makes me laugh because when I started seeing shows in the 80s, late 80s, it was, why are you weren't here in the 70s. You weren't here, the Pigpen days. And now, we're the old fucks, right? The touchers that are still hanging on, 30 years later. It is, I find the whole thing pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember in the late 90s or in the mid 90s, when the next generation of, of Deadheads were starting to come in. I remember these shows got pretty rowdy. Even 95 was a very rowdy year, right before Jerry passed. And I remember all these kids who were kids to me then, when Jerry passed away, they had Fish, which was, their opportunity to experience, I guess, what we had experienced for the decade beforehand. A lot of the guys that I became friends with started touring in the mid-'70s. A lot of the old-timers, who I'm now friends with, people that went to the shows in the early 70s and late 60s, weren't around really in the late 80s. It was a different band, I guess, from their perspective.
Yeah, well, it really has been an evolution. 30 years of playing and 50-some-odd years, 51, 52 years of incarnations now. So, like a living, breathing organism, it just keeps changing with the people and the music and the players and, and the music never stops. And so I think that's kind of where I look at it now,
Right. Now, from 87 to 87 and 88, I only went to a handful of shows, but, really memorable shows. I went down to Hampton Coliseum in 1988. I remember I heard Might As Well. I remember a buddy of mine hanging out of the car window on the way down there with a full stick of tie stick, a full stick, which is something that you never would see in 2016. It's just not something that's around, but it was, tie stick actually came on a stick. Mm-hmm. It was the whole stick, and it was very different than, at least at the time, from other cannabis at the time. So it was funny. He's hanging out the highway on the way down to Virginia with a huge bud in his hand.
Nice. Well, let's get us up to 1989 because we picked a lot of shows and a lot of songs. So I want to hear about this. I want to hear about what went down in July.
Well, what really, as far as Philly was, July 7th, 1989 was sort of a linchpin show. It was a banner show for a number of reasons in Philly. First of all, it was I believe it was the last show at JFK. The stadium really crumbled under our feet that night. And I had been to JFK previously for Live Aid, and that's where the Army-Navy game was every year at that time in the 80s and in the 90s, or in the 80s, because on July 7th, 1989, well, first of all, we did something that I don't think people, young people nowadays really get. We slept out for tickets for the show,
Wow.
a couple of months beforehand. People don't sleep out for tickets anymore. That's not a practice. You get on the internet, and if you can beat the ticket bot, then you get a ticket if you're in the first 2 minutes. But back then, they would sell. There were Ticketmasters had outlets, and we would all go there and sleep out. 24 hours ahead of time, get in a line with a lawn chair and a cooler and whatever else. And we would wait till the line opened up, and then we would get our tickets in the morning. And that's not something that happens anymore. But for that show, I think all of Philly must have been sleeping out for July 7th, 1989.
Well, was it at least spring by then? Okay, so we're talking Philly for a July show. I'm trying to put myself right there. So was it freezing out, right? You're not waiting in December or January or do you remember?
My recollection of waiting out the night before, I had a good friend, Sean, and he fell asleep in a sleeping bag waiting out, and there was a trash, can full of whatever, and the thing was leaking, and it somehow it found its way to Sean while he was sleeping, and so when he got up, he was just covered with dirty and gross water. I can't remember exactly when it was that they were on sale, but it was probably in the spring. It was probably sometime in the spring.
So you wait in line, you get the tickets, and then the show. So tell me a little bit of the show, then we're going to play the song that you selected.
Well, we got to the show, and I do remember it was an incredibly hot day there, and the place was full. There was probably 100,000 people there. JFK was in a complex with the Spectrum and Vet Stadium, and parking was everywhere, among that complex. And JFK was an old-style, huge stadium, and there were probably 100,000 people in attendance that day, 90,000 at least. It was just so full. And, this is the stadium that I had seen Live Aid in, and I had seen the Synchronicity concert there. It was, when Michael Jackson was in town, that's where he played as well. So we get there, and it was a hot day, and I remember there were these huge water guns that they would just turn on the crowd and just spray down the crowd with these huge water guns. But which had probably added to the demise of that stadium, because literally the stadium was crumbling under our feet. And if memory serves me correct, the next show there was The Who, and I think they canceled that show and closed down that stadium. I may be wrong. There may have been one other show in that stadium, but I think the Grateful Dead show on July 7th, 1989 literally brought the house down.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, that's history. That's history happening.
And when we were there, Philly loved Brent. Just loved it. And Brent loved Philly, you could tell. And the performance that he gave at that show was extraordinary. It was absolutely memorable. Every time he was in Philly, it was a Brent thing, he was always singing a song or two, and the crowd went wild when he would perform.
So that again, the perfect full circle moment, and listeners, this is not staged at all, but we are now going to hear Brent blow away JFK, right? The last show there. So that all works out and it's with a tiny little bow. So we're going to go and hear it. So let's hear some of Brent blowing away JFK Stadium on July 7th, 1989. And I always kind of remind people at the beginning, and we have 5 songs to choose. So I'm going to just do a nice little chunk of this, 2, 3, 4 minutes, and then I'm going to have the full song on the separate attachment. So let's get a little taste of this, and then we're going to come back and go into the 90s and hear what was next along the road. So everyone enjoy. are now back from listening to Brent blow away JFK, and there's a little bit more stories going on out here on the East Coast. Tell me about Madison Square Garden. You had a couple fun stories about that.
I did. Before I get to that, in a couple days after the JFK show, the Dead played in Giants. They played two shows in Giants, the 9th and 10th of July. The show on the 10th was the biggest rainstorm I've ever been in at a concert. And I remember when they went into Tennessee Jed that day on July 10th. And as they went in, this storm just took hold. And there were, 60,000 just soaking wet Deadheads in Giants Day. It was an incredible moment. And I'm sure anyone who was there will remember it.
It's almost like a Woodstock story, right? Like when the rain came, like that's what I imagine, of that East Coast summer storm, where everything comes on, strong.
Well, so much of the Grateful Dead's music and so much of my experience with the Grateful Dead is frankly weather related. A lot of their music addresses, the change in season, the change in people's temperament. And I really do believe that the change in season has a profound effect on all of us, and we all go through changes along with the seasons. And the music really describes that and helps us, cope with it and address it, as we're going through these changes.
Well, that is a very cool perspective. I've never thought about it like that, but I really like that. That's super cool. Absolutely. No, it is, and it's funny for me because my experiences in the summer were just a little different because everything was on the West Coast, and now living on the East Coast, but coming from the West Coast, the weather and the seasons mean so many different things.
Right. I know. I remember my first West Coast show at Cal Expo in '92, and I heard a version of Birdsong there, and it really dawned on me the difference that Birdsong means to the West Coast than it had meant to me on the East Coast. Hearing the song, songs take on different meanings, I guess, in different places. I was a first set junkie, and so I used to try and pick out that Wednesday show in the middle of nowhere because I knew I would be getting what my brother and I call the state songs, mm-hmm. Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, whatever it is, and we used to love, the state songs, and we were real first set junkies, which kind of brings me to the next show that I wanted to talk about, which was September 10th, 1991.
Yeah.
I had a moment during the first set there that anybody who goes, any tour heads who go to a bunch of shows, can relate to. I had that moment where I locked eyes with Jerry Garcia, and for a few seconds, whatever it was, I felt that he was playing to me, at that moment, which was, something that I've recounted with other people, and they've recounted their own stories of that same type of thing. Right.
Oh, I'm sure he was. I think that connection is what brings us in and then locks you down for sure.
Right. Well, it was like there was eye contact, whether there was or not. It was, in my mind, it was like there was eye contact, and and he was smiling at me, and there was just that moment in time. And it was, Branford was on the stage and they're playing It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Train to Cry. And it was such a amazing moment that, I really spent the next, I'd say 20, 25 years trying to chase down that song. I know Furthur played it once in Eugene, Oregon. I wasn't there at the show. I never really I've heard it played by musicians that at my request, but I never got that glimpse at that song again, on that level, since that night. So that's why that night is so memorable to me.
Wow. Well, it's like a little magic capsule, you know, like a rare thing, like that rare needle in the haystack, having the moment with Jerry in the song, and then have it be almost like it never happened. I'm sure, you know, because you don't. I mean, not that it didn't happen, but it's not something that is in the catalog that you see. So I'm sure it's just the elusiveness makes it even more special.
Yeah, because you don't know. I mean, you know, Jerry could have been just looking in. Who knows? Those lights are bright when you're on stage, and I know that from being on the other side, from throwing these charity concerts that I've been throwing. So I do know that the lights are bright up there, and I don't know ultimately if you can see who's in seventh row or not, which is where I was at the time. But in my mind, I had that eye contact, and Jerry was playing, and he was playing to me directly, and for that moment in time, that's how I registered.
Well, that is awesome, and I agree. I agree 100%. Absolutely. Well, let's hear it, because again, this isn't a song that I'm really even very familiar with, and so I was able to track this down. So I'm really excited to bring you back to that moment and bring everyone to that song and to that place. So I am going to now go into It Takes a Lot to Laugh and It Takes a Lot to Cry from September 10th, 1991 in Madison Square Garden. So we are back from listening to It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Lot to Cry, and we're going to go a little farther down the road. And me and Rob were talking for a minute, and I mean, this is there's a lot of common themes in his show. So this is really fun. So tell me a little bit about the next stop on the journey.
Well, the next stop is the snowstorm show. So a lot of these are weather related, which is unique. And like I said before, the Grateful Dead's music is so weather related, and we are so, and we change, seasons change, and we change. So on March 14th, 1993, well, actually on the 13th, we drove up from Washington, D.C., a bunch of buddies and me. We drove up to from Washington, D.C. up to Ohio, up to Richfield Coliseum. And this was a snowstorm like no others. You know, it was March, and it was mid-March, and you would expect, you know, sort of in like a line out like a lamb, but this was winter's last hurrah, I guess. And there were trucks stranded on the side of the road, and you know, we made it the night before to Washington, PA, and then we got up the next day, and we were driving in, at that time I had a Pathfinder, and we were driving in my Pathfinder, but of course the radio was out because, you know, it was a college car, and, and you know, did the best I could to upkeep it, but we had no radio work. CD player was working, though, so we were playing CDs and all that on the way up. And when we got to Richfield Coliseum, we didn't know because the radio was out, but the concert was canceled on the 13th. So we had to find. So there we are in the middle of the frozen tundra of Richfield Coliseum's parking lot, all alone. There's a canceled concert. I do recall that as a side note, I did find a $10 bill in the snow on the ground. So there was
that's a win.
That was that victory. And we stayed in, I remember we stayed in Independence, a town called Independence, which I guess was outside of Cleveland. And the hotel, I can't remember what Blue Light Hotel it was, but it was just full of Deadheads, you know, that had come from everywhere to see this show. And, you know, the treat was that the next night's performance. So they had, we went into the show on March 14th after having weathered this incredible storm, and we all, you know, we're, what are they going to play? What are they going to play? And so, you know, the big song was the Brown Eyed Women that they played, because again, there were weather-related themes. It snowed so hard the roof caved in, and so I think you may have that queued up, and you'll hear a big cheer on that song. I will tell you that they did bust out "I Fought the Law" that night, so that was
fun.
That was the bust that we got for having weathered that humongous snowstorm.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear because I have not heard this version, and it sounds like there's a lot of power behind it. So let's go into that, and I think let's go in. The snowed so hard that the roof caved in. Wow, so cool. So let's enjoy, and then we will be back, and we got a couple more stops because you have a long and windy road that never stops. So which is just so fun. So everybody enjoy, and then and we'll be back.
James, come to me.
So welcome back from listening to Brown-Eyed Women. And so the next turn on the journey is, a lot of changes. And I feel like then so many of the podcasts of people who have been, so vested in the music and the community for so long, there's a lot of bit of a hiatus. But with you, there isn't a hiatus. So I'm excited for you to show the next journey.
Right. Well, I was very fortunate, when I was in law school in the mid-90s, I had a very understanding girlfriend who later became my wife, and she said to me, look, Rob, if you could just stay local, New York, Philly, Boston, Washington, then you won't be missing classes, you'll be able to get through law school and all that. So I made that deal, to try and stay local in 94 and 95. But only after, I said to my girlfriend, who's my wife now for 20 years, I said, look, I'll do that, but how about you come on a whole tour with me? So in 94, before, I decided to sort of settle down to the local Northeast area, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and she was never really a Deadhead, but, enjoyed the music. She went to 20 shows in 1994 alone, which was,
Wow.
pretty amazing. Yeah.
Wow. That is that's so cool. That's a keeper over there.
Right. Well, and then even in 95, when I was working at Department of Justice in the Admiralty Aviation Division on the day that Garcia died, and she called me and she said, are you sitting down? And I was, and all that, and so she told me that Garcia died, and I really took it hard, so I went out to one of the stairwells at 26 Federal Plaza, and I was having a cigarette there, and in comes one of these FBI agents who I was buddies with, and he says to me, what's wrong, Rob? He smoked a pipe. It wasn't a weed pipe. It was tobacco, regular, old guy kind of pipe, not a corn cob. And he says, what's wrong, Rob? And I said, Garcia just died. So this guy tells me how in the 70s he was working with the DEA, and he used to tour around and have dinner with Garcia and all that, how they were best buds. It was the craziest conversation in the middle of the Federal Building. But, yeah, that's my recollection of Jerry's passing, which was, obviously, and then we went to Central Park that night to where, the Imagine area where John Lennon, with the candles and all that are set up. And we didn't know what to do.
Right.
We didn't know what to do. It was the same. Ultimately, when Brent had died 5 years earlier, it was very similar. Deadheads all got together, and we didn't know what to do because we were just sort of totally lost in time and space. And we were waiting for the other band members to figure out what to do. So along comes the other ones. I think in 90, I can't remember when they started. They had this Furthur sort of festival type thing, and then it wasn't Furthur the band. They had this Furthur sort of festival thing, and then they had the other ones. And I went to a couple of other one shows. I remember going to one in Saratoga, but the one that really sticks out in my memory is July 1798. My brother and I flew out to St. Louis, and we saw the first. We saw another one show there, and Hornsby was playing with that band, and I can't remember who else was with that band. But what I remember from that show is the first time that I saw Keith. And people had said, "Oh, there's Keith." I said, "What's Keith?" The first time that I actually saw what Keith was, which was my recollection. I remember they did not sing Black-Throated Wind that night. They did sing a bunch of songs about the river, the Mississippi or the Missouri, which we were sitting on, both of them. I think that's where the Riverport Amphitheater is. But they did not sing Black-Throated Wind. But they did sing a bunch of river songs. So to speak.
What about Mississippi Half Step?
Yeah, they probably did.
Probably played that.
I know they sung a Bruce Hornsby song about the river, too, and it was a great song. I also have a recollection of, there were groups of people that used to go to Dead shows that were called spinners. I don't know if they still exist, but they did at the time. And there was one girl who was a spinner. The entire show she spun, and my brother and I were calling her Gandhi because she was spinning the entire show without a break. It was like she was on a spinning hunger strike or something like that. But it was, you used to go into, when you would come out of your in an indoor stadium, or even an outdoor stadium, when you'd be walking around, the halls would be full of people spinning.
Oh, yeah.
There used to be groups of it. I don't know if that
Oakland
still exists
Coliseum.
anymore.
No, I don't know. Not as much, but Oakland Coliseum, or again, back to my California experiences. The hallways just jammed, or the shoreline up at the top of the lawn, and it was. I would spin for a few minutes, but I would never had the dedication to spin during a whole show.
A whole show spinning, yeah.
I could not do a whole show. I couldn't do a whole show doing any one thing, and I think it depended on what I was partaking in that night, on what I was doing. So I think that's probably a fair assessment for most of us, though.
Yeah, without a doubt. There were the shows that you wanted to be down on the floor up close, and there were the shows that you wanted to be tucked away somewhere in the back.
Yeah. No, I think it all depends on the venue, the crowd, your mood, and again, what you were dipping into that night. I think there was a lot of different factors that went into what the output was for this. Well, I want to go on and talk about, we have a couple more songs, and then I have something else that I really want to ask you about, because one of the ways, goes back to how we connected. So let's go to 2012, because this is our last weather story. So while we're on that, and then we have got a couple of more topics when we get back.
Okay.
So tell me
just
a
real
bit about
quick
why you chose
before we get
this.
to 2012, there were a couple other shows in '99 that are worth mentioning. First, Phil came back with, he got a liver transplant, and he came back April 1999. He played 3 shows at the Warfield, and I was lucky enough to be at one of those shows, and to go and see him perform with Trey and with a guy named Fishman who plays with Fish. There was also a moment when I was in Worcester in November of '99 where I actually met Trey on the floor. I didn't know it was him until my brother came and told me that it was him. And, he did ask me what I thought of Fish's music, and, I gave him an honest answer, which was not emphatically positive. And then I later came to find out that it was, Trey that I was speaking with. So it was kind of a funny story for the night, yeah.
So we're going to play a little Stella Blue from the Warfield show from 1999, and we're just going to do a little taste of this because we have so many good shows and so much songs in here. So let's all enjoy listening to some Stella Blue, and this is from the Warfield on April 16th, 1999, and then we're going to get back and go hop on to 2012. Well, back from listening to Stella Blue in 1990, and now we are turning the century to the new millennium. And there again, you've been just on the bus the whole time and have so many stories. So tell me a little snapshot about what happened, in 2000, between 2000 and 2010. Just a little overview of where you were at with your stories and experience.
From 2000 to 2010, Phil Lesh carried the torch, mainly with the Q and with a few other key players. And Bob Weir carried the torch with Rat Dog and a few other key players. And I want to make mention of all of these, very important musicians and very beloved musicians that worked with both Bobby and Phil, Haynes and Claypool and Fish and Ryan Adams, Jackie Green and The National and Soul Live, all these great artists that performed with Phil and with Bobby during that time period, before, Phil and Bobby got back together in, I think it was the end of 2009 or maybe the beginning of 2010 for Furthur. So during that time period, we had such a great benefit, both on the West Coast and the East Coast, of seeing Phil Lesh play with all these great players and Bob Weir playing with all these great players. And it was really sort of a rebirth of the music that we love and that, that we've been, dancing to for all these years. And so, during that time period, I'm sure I went to see Phil and Bobby over 150 times at different venues, and mainly with these players that I mentioned before, and and John Molo and Rob Rosman with Phil, and Steve Kimmock, and with Bobby, and Chimenti, and all these great players that that we love so much now.
And we love now, and they're thriving. I mean, they're filling out venues, and people are going, and it's amazing.
Yeah, Warren's playing with orchestras now. The music that we've been listening to all this time, and he's really giving us. And look at Jackie Green, who may be taking the helm as the hardest working man in show business. He's playing, it seems like he's playing every night somewhere different in the country, and it's really great to see. And, that really brings me to this incredible show that I saw with Jackie and Phil in 2012. It was just a moment in time, another weather-related moment. It was a show. It was a show on the heels of Hurricane Sandy. It was a couple days after. Nobody had electricity. None of us had slept. We were all cold and bedraggled, and we were filling our generators with gasoline to get whatever little power we could. And then a couple days after Sandy, the night of this show in North Jersey at the Welmont Theater, in comes this nor'easter. So we just had Sandy. We've got no heat. We've got no electricity. And here comes this nor'easter storm. So a few of us, and I'd say there was probably 400 to 600 people made it to that show, and made it out to the Welmont Theater, and we got treated with this incredible treat. I realized by the time Jackie was singing "Let Me Sing Your Blues Away," I realized, since I'd never heard that song before, and why would I, that they were playing the entire Wake of the Flood. So what an incredible experience it was.
Wow, that's so cool. Well, I am going to play just a little chunk of it. I'm going to play the Let Me Sing Your Blues Away portion. And again, in efforts to keep it not super long, I'll do, again, a nice chunk, but doing the whole Wake of the Flood, I mean, we could do a whole nother show on that. So, well, let's go in and hear a bit about that, and then we have one more song story, and then a couple more things I want to ask you about. So, everybody, enjoy, and we will be back. Well, now back from listening to just a little bit of Wake of the Flood, Let Me Sing Your Blues Away. And we're in 2012, but it's about a month later and about 3,000 miles away. So I want you to tell me a little bit about New Year's Eve.
Well, it was the 30th. I typically don't go to the shows on New Year's Eve because I spend it with my kids, and I make pizza bagels, an old tradition. I'll tell Shanker's Barn story to my kids, with my grandfather's old story, growing up in Chelsea, Massachusetts, probably not too far from where you are. And so on the 30th, I'd made arrangements to go out to California and see a friend of mine, Carlo Lala, and I was really excited, I mean, how many of there are people that we become friends with on Facebook, and then we become friends with them in real life. And Carlo was one of those people, and he was actually the first one of those people. We had so many shared common interests because Carlo and I were both from Philly, around the same time, and we'd been to probably most of these shows that I've recounted to you. He'd been there as well. So Carlo and I became friends and on Facebook, and then we went out to California and we met up at the show, and really since then Carlo and I have been like peas and carrots. So this particular show was incredible. I brought my daughter, who was 12 at the time. My family came out to San Francisco with me, and my daughter came to the show on the 30th, and it was just such an exceptional show because at the end of the show, they played this Going Down the Road into We Bid. And, everybody knows that end of Going Down the Road sounds like the intro to We Bid You Goodnight. But as far as I'm aware, the Grateful Dead and any incarnations sub-Grateful Dead never really, never played it that way. And so you were always left hanging at the end of Going Down the Road that, where's the We Bid? Well, that night, I believe, again, for the first time, they played it that way. And what an incredible experience, And I do remember Sunshine Becker singing Lay Down My Dear Sisters, and my daughter just loved that. She just loved that Sunshine was including, women into the song as well. It was it was a momentous experience, and I think that's something that people will enjoy listening to.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm going to do just the very end of Going Down the Road and then go into We Bid You Goodnight. So this is going to be our final song on the podcast, but we are going to come back because I have a couple more questions and want to say goodbye. So let's hear this, and this is from 12/30/2012, and then we will be back to say goodbye. Going down the road, feeling bad. Going down the road, feeling bad. I don't wanna be treated so bad. Going down the road, feeling bad. Going down the road, feeling bad. Well, we are back, and I just, these podcasts are so much fun, and I mean, what a world we live in, because, I mean, I want to say, I don't know, 80% of the people at this point that I have met through, per your story earlier, Facebook or Twitter, and then I get to meet them in real life, and then we get to be friends, and I am so excited to come down to New York in February to see the Tree of Life concert, and I want you to tell me a little bit about it, and I want you to share some of the information with the listeners.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Tree of Life is a fundraising benefit concert for adults with developmental disabilities, meaning, autism or Down syndrome, something like that. What we want to do ultimately is create housing and employment opportunities for adults with developmental disabilities. From 1998 through 2003, there was a real spike in the autism rate, and especially here in the East Coast, but also, as I've learned, in the West Coast as well, and in certain other urban areas. And there is a real shortage of housing for adults with developmental disabilities, because the traditional group homes are going to people that have more serious physical impairments, and there are no longer institutions or appropriate type places where individuals with developmental disabilities can reside. So what happens is these children reside at home, and when their parents pass away, they become sort of the ward of their siblings. I have a son, my oldest son and daughter. I have two sons, but my oldest son and daughter are twins, and my son is severely autistic. Presently, he goes to school up at Center for Discovery, Monticello, New York, and it's a wonderful, wonderful place, and I'm grateful, entirely grateful. In fact, some of the musicians who are playing Tree of Life have gone up there and played birthday show. Scott Metzger and Ellie Peck played a birthday show for Aaron, up in last March, and it was just the residents and the staff of Center for Discovery, and they played a private show for them for my son's birthday. It was really a wonderful thing. So a couple of years ago, I decided I wanted to create a fundraising concert, sort of along the lines of the Bridge School, but really so I could create housing for adults with, developmental disabilities and employment opportunities. I spoke to all these musicians who, again, I became friends with on social media. I became friends with them on Facebook. Some of them live in person. Alex Coford. I became friends with live in person. Scott Metzger, Elliot Peck, Alex Nelson, Jackie Green, Jason Crosby, Sunshine Becker. They're all coming together for this purpose, and they're playing this gala concert, 7-hour concert on February 25th. There's going to be 7 sets. And what Tree of Life likes to do is mix and match up the musicians. And the reason is because ultimately the housing complex that we intend to develop, where their residents will be disabled, they will work in a venue. There will be a venue there, and we're hoping, and the plan is for these musicians who are our friends will come there and do a residency for a couple of days and work with the residents and play, benefit shows, and so this is the plan going forward into the future, to have sort of this marriage between special needs and the music that the special needs community loves so much.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, music is therapy, and therapy is music, right?
It truly is. It truly
that's
is.
That's how I feel in my life. So, you know, it absolutely, that is well, that is so beautiful. I can't wait. I'm so excited, and we will meet in person. I mean, we may meet before, but I mean, it's already Christmas, so if not before, I'm so excited for that trip. And so this is going to be, so give the stats. So everyone get out their pen for the website and the information, so it's out there.
The Rough Trade in New York City.
Okay.
Tickets are available at roughtradenyc.com. There will be it's limited availability because the venue doesn't hold that many people. There will be again, it's going to be a 7-hour event. It's going to be 7 sets. I mean, there's just so many performers that I've come to know and that have become friends of mine along the way in the last several years. You know, Katie Jacoby will be there. Alex Jordan is playing. Jason and Chris Crosby are playing together. There's going to be another brothers set. I'm sure there's likely to be more surprises. I'm sure there's going to be as many musicians in the venue watching the show as there are performing.
Oh, wow.
So
well, I am so excited. No, and I mean it's going to be such a great night, and then for such an amazingly necessary cause. You know, that's
right.
That's
100%
important for everyone.
100% of the proceeds go to Ferncliff Manor, which is a housing development school in Yonkers, New York. They're very good friends of mine. They've been around for generations. They are a part of the community, and I'm grateful to them. 100% of the proceeds go to Ferncliff Manor, and that's the way we've done it in the past. This is the third Tree of Life, and that's the way we've done it in the past. All the money goes to these 501c3s that provide housing and create opportunities for adults and children with developmental disabilities. And it's my heart is in it, and all the musicians have been so supportive of this cause. I'm eternally grateful to them.
Well, I cannot wait, and I cannot wait. Absolutely excited about it. Meeting you in person and seeing the show. So it sounds like a real bang for your buck for a weekend down from Massachusetts, and I'm excited.
Right. Now, I would encourage people to go to Rough Trade New York NYC.com for tickets. I would also encourage people to visit ferncliffmanor.org to learn about Ferncliff. There's also sponsorship opportunities and VIP seating if you're interested in that. Rough Trade has got this incredible. Rough Trade is basically a venue that's made of opened up shipping containers. It's an unbelievable venue. I just saw Green Day there with 150 people. It was like being at a 1984 punk show. You know, it was unbelievable. So I would encourage people to check out both Rough Trade New York City, NYC, for tickets, and also ferncliffmanor.org to learn more about Ferncliff and to see how you can get involved.
Well, that sounds good. Well, I know I'm on it, and I'm glad that we're getting this out there for as many people to learn about it in as many different ways as possible.
And thank you, Staci, so much for this opportunity to sort of tell my story. And
I love your story. Your story is so good. Your story is such a, it's the ultimate what a long, strange trip it's been story, right? I mean, it sounds so cliche to say that, but I mean, your story has there's just so much meat on the bones. It's so exciting to hear it because it's a story with lots and lots of meat on the bones, and those are the best stories. So thank you for sharing it with everyone.
And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to let everybody know, and especially to talk about, what's near and dear to my heart, which is the Tree of Life show.
Absolutely. Well, we will see each other soon. And as always, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.
The sky was yellow and the sun was blue. Changing, stopping strangers, just a shake of hands. Everybody's playing in the heart of Golden Land, heart of Golden Land.